Hi everyone, it's Mark and Korshik from Chartergate Legal Services. We've got our next instalment of our Legal Insight series looking at the Employment Rights Act, and the subject matter for this video is the Fair Work Agency. Now for me, Korshik, I think this is the biggest development to come out of the Employment Rights Act, because generally speaking, if someone wants to enforce their employment rights, it's via the Employment Tribunal at the moment. So you've got an individual, they've got to go to the trouble of making a claim, they've got to have the energy to make the claim, they've got to have the time to make the claim, and they've got to get over that hurdle of, for the most part, representing themselves in a tribunal, which can be daunting. And for a lot of employers, the best defence is sometimes to drag it out, make it hard, and rely on the fact that in the end, most employees, even disgruntled ones, just don't make a claim. Well, now we've got the Fair Work Agency. I think if we go back to, was it 2017 maybe, with the Good Work Report by Matthew Taylor, no relation. He talked about a single enforcement body, and consecutive governments promised it without ever delivering it. Then we got to the Labour government, who have now established the Fair Work Agency. So why don't we start by you going through what the Fair Work Agency is and what it's going to look at.
Just before I begin, I was going to ask that question for our viewers, just to be clear. The head of the new Fair Work Agency is an M. Taylor.
Is an M. Taylor.
Is there anything you'd like to tell our...
Well, a lot of clients have asked about that, given that the two founders are Matthew Boddington, my colleague, and Mark Taylor, me, whether Matthew Taylor was a combination of us both and a dream come true with all these new employment laws. But I can safely say, as delighted as I am by all the new laws, we are not the authors of this.
Okay, so since we've got that on the record and out of the way, right at the outset. So at the moment, there's a number of state authorities that have some responsibility over various enforcement functions. Plus, then there's also the Employment Tribunal as well. So at the moment, we have authorities such as the Employment Advisory Standards Inspectorate. They're responsible for enforcing and regulating the conduct regulations. 2003.
So that's the EAS.
EAS.
We're not allowed to call them easy, are we?
Oh yes, we're not, and they're anything but easy. And they have quite significant powers in relation to employment businesses and employment agencies. So temporary work agencies, recruitment agencies. Then separately from that, there's some elements of enforcement functions that are conducted by the Gangmaster and Labour Abuse Authority.
Okay.
And separately to that, there's also HMRC that enforces certain aspects of legislation relating to national minimum wage and statutory sick pay.
Okay.
And then on top of that, separately from that, as you rightly point out, there's individual claims, i.e. those that can be brought by individuals to the Employment Tribunal. What the new authority will be is essentially an amalgamation of those 3 or 4 state bodies into one overarching government body. We're told it'll be given greater resources, but what it'll certainly have are greater powers as well. And they will be able to do much of the functions of those separate bodies, of those different bodies that we've already got, but also have additional functions as well.
Okay.
So, for example, holiday pay claims are a good starting point. At the moment, generally speaking, it's employees who have to go to the time and effort and of course assess and calculate holiday pay where they feel or believe that they have not been paid the statutory holiday or holiday pay that they are owed. And they have to bring those claims themselves to the Employment Tribunal. And that will essentially be an individual claim as well. Generally tends not to be a group claim. What we have now is a situation where the Fair Work Agency can bring that claim on behalf of the employee, or could even bring claims on behalf of a number of employees. And that has quite significant ramifications. It's not, we here at Chartergate keep an eye on employment tribunal judgments,
Yeah.
decisions. And just recently, just February, in fact, of this year, 2026, there was a holiday pay claim for 390 that was successful for £391,000 for
Wow.
one member of staff, for one employee.
Just holiday pay.
Just holiday pay.
Okay.
Now that's going to have now if you that was just an individual claim.
Yeah.
Imagine that being brought by the Fair Work Agency on behalf of a number of individuals at this employer.
Okay.
It's going to quite quickly tot up to a significant amount.
Yeah, I'm trying to do a sum in my head and it's so big I can't.
Well, and then let's move on from that as well. What other powers will the Fair Work Agency have? Well, aside from obviously having the resources of a state enforcement authority, they'll also have the power to name and shame, which previously was confined really to underpayments of national minimum wage. Well, now it will be, it could apply across a whole range of enforcement functions. But also, we're also they can levy a fine of 200% of the amount they find is underpaid. So, for example, in that claim of
I'm trying to do 200% of 390,000 and I can't do it.
It's quite a bit. We might need a calculator.
Yeah.
So there you have a significant impact that the Fair Work Agency could have on the labour market. Of course, also bear in mind that when an employee brings a claim to the Employment Tribunal, they not only will have to do it themselves, they will have to ask for disclosure of certain documents. Of course, the Fair Work Agency will have beefed up powers. They can enter premises. They can seize documents.
Yeah.
They can require documents to be provided. And rather than all the length and time of going through an employment tribunal process, they can also issue notices of underpayment as well.
Okay, so significant powers, significant fines, significantly more for an employer to do now or to guard against. So what happens if the Fair Work Agency issues an enforcement notice? Can that be challenged? I mean, what's the process for an employer that gets an enforcement notice but disagrees with it?
So the process would be to appeal to the Employment Tribunal.
Oh, okay.
But now the onus is on the employer to appeal to the Employment Tribunal to set aside whatever that particular notice is. But we've now got a situation where the Fair Work Agency, if it discovers something is amiss, for example, with the holiday pay of workers, it will probably now look into other matters as well. So it'll probably look into matters like sick pay. It might well look at, if it's a recruitment business, into compliance with the conduct regulations. Yeah. So we're looking at an umbrella organisation that once it spots one thing, may well now, and is probably likely to, simply start exploring and digging for other matters as well. Okay.
So it feels to me that what we're really looking at here is, if anyone out there's gone through a HMRC inquiry, this is the Fair Work Agency feels like it's HMRC, but for employment rights.
Absolutely. But with significantly beefed up powers.
Yeah. Okay. So how do employers prepare for these things? What should they be doing?
Yeah, good question. Certainly for any employers that have low pay workers, it's worth now doing an audit and assessment of those workers and checking whether those workers are being paid, for example, national minimum wage and statutory sick pay and holiday pay.
Okay.
Also, it's important to make sure records are up to date as well. I mean, that is key, really, because in the context of this, any inquiry brought by the Fair Work Agency, the first thing that they will ask for, the first thing that HMRC always asks for is, show us your records. Yeah. And of course, you're meant to keep records for 6 years. So it's important to keep records of hours worked, of pay paid, of holiday pay paid, evidence of SSP being paid, for example, which of course is a day one right for workers. Yeah. Now, having all of that will help employers, fend off any issues should Fair Work Agency officers arrive and start asking questions and asking for documents and evidence.
So Kaushik, before we finish up on the Fair Work Agency, what can businesses expect from the Fair Work Agency? Because as representatives, my experience with HMRC, if it's a national minimum wage, or the EAS with regards to the conduct regs, most of their activity stems from complaints. How do we think the Fair Work Agency are going to work in comparison to the bodies they're kind of taking over?
Yeah, good question, Mark. Absolutely. That's absolutely been my experience as well. So far, the individual separate bodies, state bodies that have been responsible for their disparate enforcement functions have been really complaints driven.
Yeah.
So what do I mean by that? Well, somebody complains to those bodies and those bodies then contact the employing body or engaging party and says, these are the kind of complaints we've had, we're going to investigate them. So very much complaints driven. Mm-hmm. But we have the government's thoughts on how this new body is going to work, and it's going to be proactive. So that is very much the government's intention. They want the Fair Work Agency to investigate before there are any complaints. So that means there's going to be assessment of the labour market as a whole. There's going to be investigations, most likely in sectors that are thought to contain high risk of labour market abuse or some kind of labour market infringements or infractions. And then you're going to find a very proactive approach being taken then by the Fair Work Agency, i.e. without complaints. So what we've traditionally seen is a investigatory process that's really premised on a complaint from a worker. So a complaint to one of these bodies from the worker, and thereafter that particular state enforcement body will then conduct an investigation. What we're now going to see moving forward is a proactive approach. The government's made that very clear in its literature. So it is going to assess, the body is going to assess the market, the labour market, identify where it thinks there are infractions or abuses of the relevant legislation, and then conduct proactive investigations into that market. So any employer, any business, even those that haven't been subject to complaints, are now at risk of an investigation by the Fair Work Agency. Okay,
thanks for that. Okay, so to summarise, I think what we've got here is employers can no longer rest on the laurels and think to themselves, well, look, the only time I'll have an issue is if one person brings a claim, so I'm okay. They're now going to be subject to an enforcement agency that can bring claims on behalf of individuals, can bring multiple claims in one go. So it's time to get their record keeping, their processes, their due diligence up to standard so they can continue to do business in the new world. Okay, well, thanks very much, Kaushik. Hope you found that informative and useful. I think the Fair Work Agency in particular is a huge development. And if you've got any questions or queries, just get in touch. We'll be happy to help. Thanks a lot.